Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. Now I wasn't going to do a video related to this because I think Neo Cards and Comics did one a little bit earlier today, which went a little bit more deep dive into this. So I didn't think there was really much more that I needed to do into it, so I was going to leave it alone. However, I did find another little story that was on Sports Collectors Daily that I did want to chat on, so I figured, all right, I'll combine the two of them and put them into one video, and that's what you've got here. So real quick, what you can see here from the Beckett Collect Instagram page, you see this posting where they say that economy is open. Now I've got here that it's going to be $35 with the subgrades and $25 without, so that is the dollar amount. And I'll scroll back up to the top here. So they're saying economy is back with no cap on maximum submission, no cap on card value, no membership required, and they're offering a 90 to 120 day business day turnaround. And like I said, Neo did a whole analysis kind of talking through the different element of it. And part of the reason I didn't think I wanted to do a video on it is, for me, the analysis is a little bit simpler. And this is just my opinion at this point, and I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well. It's a little bit too little too late. Truthfully, Beckett's already done a lot of damage to its own reputation, its own backlog issues, a lot of related things. And it's not, and it has one thing that, PSA, who also has had a long time backlog that isn't done yet, doesn't have. PSA is still the market leader in terms of value retention when you're going to go sell something. If you get a PSA 10 item, it can still sell for a premium over some of the other ones. Beckett does not necessarily have that cachet unless you get a Beckett 10 or a black label, which are very difficult to get generally, unless you're part of certain organizations, and I'll leave that to Sports Card Radio to talk about. But regardless, they are generally difficult to come by. So you can't just assume a Beckett 10, you can't assume a black label. So even though those ones do hold pretty good value, most likely you'd be looking at something more like a 9.5, which hurts comparatively to, say, a PSA 10 or even an SGC 10. I think the BGS 9.5 might be a little bit better. I'd have to look into the exact numbers on that. But regardless, Beckett's brand equity, as far as that, isn't that great. $35 is certainly good. It's not. It's better than obviously what PSA would be offering for 50, but we just talked about the value difference there. And it's somewhat competitive to SGC, but realistically SGC is giving it to you for cheaper. And we do know their turnaround time is certainly better than 90 to 120 business days. And that last piece is particularly the reason why I say, like, it's too little too late on this one. Yes, $35 is better. At least it gives you competitive with PSA, but it only barely keeps you competitive with SGC, which is actually offering lower with a faster turnaround time. And then you can decide for yourself which holder you prefer, or whether you like SGC or not. Regardless, though, if I was going to go with a PSA alternative, SGC probably makes more sense. And if you don't prefer that, CSG probably makes more sense. Beckett, reopening their economy, it's good, but a little late on this in regards to it. And if you're going to be trying to be competitive, you might have been better off going with $25, especially if you're going with a 90 to 120 day turnaround. You're offering 3 to 4 months at $35. That doesn't seem like a very compelling offering from my perspective. But again, just my opinion, and I'd be open to getting any thoughts you might have in regards to that. Is this remotely interesting to you? We may touch on this a little bit on Friday, and I'll let Eric have at it as far as this one's concerned. I'm sure he'll have a thing or two to say about this one. So that is the first thing that I wanted to talk about a little bit. And now I want to get to the second one. And this one is an article actually from today that I'm recording. So this is Monday evening that I'm recording this. And this one's interesting because not necessarily is the story itself, and I'll leave a link to in the description on this one for you if you want to check it out yourself, but what implications it could have for down the road. I had seen that on Twitter, Brian Gray of Leaf had been alluding to potentially taking action against an athlete who hadn't been signing. Well, here we've got the rest of the information. So Leaf suing Cowboys receiver Cee Dee Lamb over autographs, basically saying that he had not completed his contract in terms of signing all the items that they had wanted him to sign. So they're suing him in order to, get damages. And so very interesting from that perspective. Obviously, redemptions have always been kind of a long-standing issue where certain athletes sometimes don't sign, or there are delays or that kind of thing, occasionally resulting in sometimes in replacements having to be made. But as the article cites correctly, to my knowledge as well, I don't believe any other company has actually taken the step of actually filing suit against a player for not providing autographs as part of a contract. So that makes it kind of interesting. So again, I would be kind of curious to get kind of your thoughts on this as far as that is concerned. Couple of important things. Obviously, there are definitely going to be some folks that would applaud Leaf for obviously taking this stance because redemptions are extremely frustrating, delays are extremely frustrating, and if it's because an athlete refuses to sign within a reasonable period of time, that is exceedingly frustrating. However, the relationship, and this has always been a little bit tricky, and I've had conversations on the channel where I've talked about this with folks, including, for example, this is now a couple of years ago, I had Carvin Chung on for a pair of conversations, and one of the things we talked about was redemptions, and he gave a lot of personal stories related to getting autographs from certain individuals, and a lot of things directly around it. To paraphrase a little bit, and you can certainly go back in the channel and check out some of those old videos, But to paraphrase a little bit, one of the challenges is, yes, this could be potentially a good way of kind of ensuring that you push maybe Cee Dee Lamb in this case to fulfill his obligation. However, what that also does, it's a little bit of a scorched earth approach, because for a lot of these athletes, a younger athlete earlier on in his career, maybe on a rookie contract, might find the novelty of signing autographs appealing, or they might be interested, or they might have a passion for cards and things like that, and they might be, enjoy the idea of having autographed cards out in the market. But as a player goes further along in their career and they've got other obligations and things going related to that, whatever money they might be making by this kind of a deal is going to pale in comparison to their contract and other endorsements. So realistically, one of the answers that some of the athletes could do is they could just limit and cut back the amount of stuff they sign, which in turn would mean either you get more, generic lower tier autographs to try to fill in some of that gap, or you just get less autographed cards, which would improve the resale value of some of the ones that you get, but it would be tougher to come by. Or some athletes just refuse to sign entirely. They just won't sign a contract going forward because they don't even want to deal with the hassle. And then folks lose out on that ability to have that. So there's a lot of different angles this can take. That's why usually this is a bit of a, kind of a last resort kind of approach. And it doesn't surprise me that Brian Gray would probably be the one that would pull the trigger on this. So this is one version of, I guess, his little red button that he talks about in the past. But this is pertaining to one specific player, one specific instance. I'd be curious to see if this would be a precedent setter where some athletes would hesitate to maybe sign a deal with Leaf, knowing that under certain circumstances, if there are delays, that they could actually go for the litigious option. Would this prevent any of them from being interested in doing it? And what would come of it? And how would some athletes think about doing their signatures or contracts going forward? And in that sense also, would it curtail any athletes from maybe just, okay, fine, in order to fulfill this, I'm only going to sign 500 for you instead of a couple of thousand or whatever the case may be for a different contract. Does just reduce the amount that are out there, which is going to help for the resale value and long-term viability of that market. But at the same time also means it'll be harder to come by a lot of this stuff. So I don't know if that would eliminate redemptions. I doubt it, because there's always going to be certain issues that could crop up that could create an issue like that. But it is interesting to see, more than anything, rather than the lawsuit itself, number one, to see what happens with this lawsuit, but then number two, to see what, if anything, it has in terms of an impact going forward. So that's why I kind of wanted to talk about this one a little bit. So it says here that the result of the dispute for Lamb is less than $100,000. So in the grand scheme of things, not a ton of money, but certainly still, for most normal people, $100,000 is quite a bit. And Leaf CEO stated on Twitter that the suit was filed in Denton County, Texas, to compel the completion of an autograph contract so that consumers holding redemptions are not forced to take replacements. So, as I said, it is a move that doesn't surprise me that Brian Gray would be the one to try doing it. It is going to be interesting to see if he is successful. What, if anything, that does in terms of future contracts with not necessarily Cee Dee Lamb, but maybe other folks that he may know. Or, would they just not bother to sign anything with Leaf? Would Leaf have trouble getting other athletes to sign under contract for them, or would it have no impact whatsoever? That'd be kind of interesting. So Leaf is seeking damages and attorney fees. They have asked the court to serve Lamb with the suit at his home or at the Dallas Cowboy offices. So we'll see kind of what happens going forward with that. I'll leave the link in the description for you so that you can check it out if you want to take a closer look at it. So I'd be curious what your thoughts are on this or on the Beckett, putting its economy service out there. Is it too little too late for them? Does something like this, could it have a long-term impact as far as folks, athletes signing? Would that reduce the number of redemptions, which could be a good thing for folks? Would it just mean there's less potential hits in certain products and they have to spread it out a little bit thinner, which should certainly affect different types of products? Are other athletes going to are other card manufacturers going to follow suit and maybe follow Brian Gray's lead and look at potentially using this kind of an action as a way of inducing certain players in terms of signing a little bit quicker? I don't know. It's one of those things that I'd be curious to see what the relationship would be between the athletes and the card manufacturer if this became a more standard practice as opposed to Brian Gray going out on his own and doing this kind of thing. So that's it for this time around. More videos coming up on the channel, live stream. This next week here, we're going to do 8 p.m. Eastern time again. And then that'll lead us into the following week where it's going to be the expo, at which point I'm going to have to figure out what the scheduling is going to be. I still like to do a live stream that weekend, but I'm not sure exactly when it's going to happen. So I'll keep everybody posted on in the channel once I know a little bit more, and we'll go from there. Thanks very much. We'll catch you in the next one.